apologies. So I'll just list all of the you got RICO, Georgia. You've got the hush money payments coming out of New York. Alvin Bragg, also Soros funded. That's the one where he allegedly paid Stormy Daniels hush money payment, and they've issued a 39 charge indictment against him because every month when he put the check, the payment, in the ledger, that's 3 felony charges right there for the same payment. So there's that. Then you got the E. Jean Carroll defamation out of New York. Then you've got the Judge Engeron alleged overvaluation fraud out of New York. You've got the Colorado removal from the ballot case going on. You've got the D.C. insurrection case going on with Jack Smith, also a corrupt hack. You've got the Florida case is the classified documents indictment, also brought by Jack Smith.
Oh my God. Okay, I thought there was like 3.
No, dude, there's 6. There's 6 or 7.
And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Welcome to the show, Mr. Viva Frei.
How's it going? Thank you for having me.
It's going very good. I guess I'll call you David, if that's okay.
How many times? Don't know, that is my real name. People get offended when they find out that my name is David and not Viva.
Yeah, is Viva a common first name? Is that?
I've got a family member whose name, I got a couple named Vivian or. It was I picked the name out of a hat to name the channel, a decade ago, just randomly, and stuck with it.
Yeah, well, I like it. Live free. Just say it's short for vivacious.
Initially I was going to say Viva Frei, live free or die, and then everyone in my family was like, you don't need to put in the die part. You can just live free. So turned into Viva Frei, live free.
You're not alone in that. I was just twittering with another Montrealer named Natasha, live free or die. So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's the New Hampshire license plate as well. But let's stay positive and say, just live free. Don't worry about the dying until it has to happen.
It's gonna exactly let it happen when it does. So I want to get into some of your story, but I figure since I have you here, let's do some current events first. And just as a bit of a preamble to that, the reason I'm doing this show, the reason I was talked into doing the last show, is because I think that whatever it is that these platforms has provided, this sort of democratization of publishing that lets people talk to other people around the world in real time, get their feedback, and also get feedback from their audience around the world in real time. I think what it's done is it's provided the natural counterbalance to the insanity. I was watching an interview with Brett Weinstein a week or two ago, and he was talking about the reason we're all going crazy is because we can't keep up with the rate that technology has advanced. And there was a previous guest on my old show named Curtis Yarvin who had a term called the cathedral, which means like the coalition of the government, the media, and academia. They put out their narrative. And then this, whatever it is that we're doing, seems to be the natural counterbalance. Like
the cathedral is one way to describe it. I mean, the other word for it is fascism in its purest form, which is government, corporations, and academia working in unison to push a narrative. It's propaganda of all tyrannical regimes and how it maintains control. And there's a reason why, we're not going to necessarily flesh it out today in detail, but there's a reason why in any regime where they're trying to control the free flow of information, they're going after the internet.
Yeah.
Trudeau in Canada, hate speech, disinformation, misinformation, malinformation.
Well, I'll have you on. We'll do a live reading of Anatomy of the State.
Sounds. I don't know how long is that book.
Oh, it's a pamphlet.
All right,
I'm joking. I think he had sort of elucidated the concept first, but then Yarvin coined that phrase that just stuck. So, anyways, we'll get into all that. But first, since I have you here, you are one of these experts who's able to talk to other people and to be able to get your opinion on stuff is really important. And I think you might be one of the most well-informed people in the world, possibly because you get to do this stuff full time and give your expert opinion. You like to comment on the legal cases that are going on. For someone like myself who does not have the time to keep up with everything, you're an amazing resource because we can tune into you, find out what's going on. So there was this person who, as of this week, I had never heard of. I don't know who she is, but I came across this clip on Twitter. I thought it was hilarious, just even without context. I don't know if you want me to play the clip first. You've probably seen.
Is it Fani Willis or is it her boyfriend?
It's both of them put together thing. So I don't know if you want to give us a
play it.
Okay. So give me a second. I'm still learning the production side of things. So
don't forget about it. While you pull it up, I'll say that it's an amazing thing. Like, yeah, I do this day in and day out. I would be doing it, out of obsession, regardless of whether or not it has turned into a career, for lack of a better word. But like, yeah, people just need aggregators of information to filter through, and also to pick the brains of there are many, many people who are much smarter and more well-informed on specific issues. And I understand that, and I got to go pick their brains, condense them down so that I can share it and understand the world myself. I haven't seen this clip.
Oh, okay. So you can see it. Perfect. I'm going to press play. Tell me if you need me to pause.
They deserve a DA that won't have sex with his employee.
Oh, yeah. No, I've seen it. Okay.
Did you or did you not, by May the 30th, 2023, have had sexual relations with Miss Willis? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes. You also said that he was a world traveler and been on many of the continents.
I've been to 6.
Have you been on any of those continents with him? Besides this one?
Doesn't know where Belize is.
Where's Belize? What continent? I'm not being funny. I don't know.
Let's say, with the exception of
Belize with him. I've been to the Bahamas with him. I've been with Aruba with him. Don't embarrass me. I'm not sure what continents those are on. Whatever continents those are. I took out a large amount of money on my first campaign. I kept some of the cash of that. I'm asking if you have any proof that you
you think?
The proof is what I just told you. You have no written proof.
The proof is what I said it, damn it.
Did you ever pay him anything other than cash? I've only given him cash a few times in the course of what we're talking about. So if we would go to dinner,
let her finish her answers.
If we would go to dinner, I wouldn't give him cash because he paid for dinner or I paid for dinner. I've given him cash only a few times in life, probably 4. Probably the most money I've ever handed him is $2,500. The least amount of money I've handed him,
she has
probably $500 and $1,000. You never wrote him a check? Ma'am, I don't have checks.
So for those of your Canadian viewers who may not know who this is Fani Willis, Georgia District Attorney, but set aside the whole Trump crap where this is like where it's really hit the fan. The poo-poo has hit the fanny. I keep making that joke. She's a district attorney.
Sorry, just to cut you off there. Is it Fanny or Fawny?
They're saying Fani now because everyone's making fun of the fact that her name is Fanny. But
okay, so we're going to go with Fanny then.
I refuse to say Fani. I mean, it's
that's
Fanny.
Just not a name.
Well, by the way, the ultimate punchline to all of this, Fanny in America, as we know it, is the backside, the bottom, the buttocks. Fanny in UK, Scottish, Ireland is the vagina, which makes all of these jokes even funnier. But for those of you who don't know, that's Fani Willis. She's the district attorney out of Georgia, Fulton County. Like one of the most powerful people in Georgia. She's prosecuted people. She's put people behind bars. This is the level of incompetence, corruption that is beneath the very thin veil that protects them. She got involved in a sexual relationship with a man that she hired to prosecute Donald Trump, or she hired the man to prosecute Donald Trump that she was already involved in a romantic relationship with, gave him hundreds of thousands of dollars by way of salary, expenses to prosecute Trump while she was taking lavish vacations with him. And so this is in the Trump RICO case, which is racketeering crime organization, racketeering intimidation crime organization. The RICO laws were basically designed to go after mobsters.
Right.
Fani Willis, who's the district attorney out of Fulton County, Georgia, came up with this novel theory that Trump, who else was in there? Jenna Ellis, the lawyers, and 20 some other people participated in a racketeering intimidation criminal organization to overturn the 2020 elections.
Oh, really? They're going after him under RICO?
Under RICO, and not just Trump. I've had a number of them on my channel. I can only come up with the name of... It's all of the mugshots you saw came out of Georgia, because it's not just enough that they have to go with this bullcrap political persecution. They got to humiliate them and get their mugshots. And oh yeah, this mugshot right here. Check this out. If you want.
Okay, yeah.
Viva Frei.
That's from this case.
That's from this case. So it's discovered through the external prosecutor, who is this guy named Nathan Wade. Doesn't work for the prosecution in general. He's external counsel that Fani Willis hired on to partake in her team. She takes Georgia money, federal money, to pay this guy that, by all accounts, she was involved with before the contract, but certainly involved with when she renegotiated his contract and agreed to give him more hours. It's discovered in the context of his divorce proceedings, because he's got a wife named Jocelyn Wade, that he's boning Fani Willis. And so the lawyer for one of the defendants to the RICO case, in that case, Michael Roman, files a motion to disqualify Fani Willis and Nathan Wade from the prosecution in the RICO case because she's conflicted, both appearance and in reality. She's been arguably laundering money through her boyfriend back to herself so she could take these trips with him,
Right.
paying him back in cash. And so they had this 2-day hearing last week on the evidentiary hearing to disqualify and, remove her, see if another DA wants to even take this bogus political case from the beginning. But it was a wild 2 days.
Well,
And
didn't
this
she run on the I'm going to get Trump?
Yeah,
Is
for
that
sure.
her? Okay.
Like Leticia James, she ran on persecuting Trump. And she got elected. And she's made a mockery of the prosecutorial system. She's made a mockery of Georgia. And, the hearing was so bad. I covered it live, day after day, 8 hours straight. It was so bad that even the MSM was saying, and I say propaganda media was saying 50-50 that she gets booted from this case because it was just over the top. She in those clips, by the way, she confirmed that she took her campaign money and kept it in cash at her house, that she repaid Nathan Wade for all of these lavish trips that she took with him, paid for by the salary that she gave him that bypassed the legal requirements of contracting in Georgia. And then she says, no, it wasn't a gift. I paid him back in cash. Oh, where'd you get all that cash from? My dad always told me. No. It was even better. Her dad always told her to have at least 6 months of cash in the house. I mean, it's so outlandish and preposterous.
Listen, devil's advocate, I keep cash in the house too, but I'm a conspiracy theorist prepper. So that makes sense. I'm not a Democratic DA.
True, right? But there's a number of things there where she said in the trial that she felt intimidated. She was getting death threats at home. And, if you're getting threats at home, you don't typically keep hordes of cash at home. They're like 6 months of cash. Even still, you have withdrawal receipts. You can evidence to some extent where that cash came from. And if you can't, that's a problem for an ordinary citizen, let alone for a district attorney. So,
well, David, she doesn't have checks.
Checks. And the other amazing thing about that whole trial is that she confirmed paying her friend who she was staying at her condo through not Zelle, but Cash App. So she has Cash Apps. She knows what Cash Apps are and she uses them, but she didn't use it to repay allegedly her boyfriend that she...
Right.
The whole thing's a debacle, but not that Canadians really care about it, and those who do probably are happy with the persecution. All of these cases against Trump in the States are political persecutions at their finest. The only reason they're a little bit different than the Navalny persecution out of Russia is at least they're not poisoning their political adversaries just yet. Now they're only just trying to bankrupt them, lock them up for life. So they're so much better than Putin.
It's prison without trial. It's much better than
disgorge them. Just
Novichok.
Seize their assets, like what they're doing in New York with.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to get into next. Was this New York judgment against Trump? Which it's funny because again, we'll get into your previous story. You've left Canada. You went to the free United States. And when I heard this judgment, I work in real estate. I'm familiar with how properties are evaluated, with how businesses run, especially if you're a developer and you're using something as a collateral for a bank loan. The bank is going to send an appraiser. They're not just going to give you money willy-nilly. They're going to validate at some level the value of a property. And there's the one rule in real estate is that everyone, that's like saying that putting an asking price on a property
is fraud.
Because you think it's worth more than someone's willing to pay.
So like the 30,000 foot overview of this, and for the viewers who don't fully appreciate what's going on in the States, you've got the Georgia RICO case against Trump. All of this brought within the last year. The Georgia RICO case out of Georgia. You've got the E. Jean Carroll sexual abuse case coming out of New York, where she was just awarded $85 million in damages, including $65 million in punitive damages for defamation because Trump reiterated his denial of ever having known the woman. That's out of New York.
Right.
Also,
and with that one, didn't they have to pass a special law that allowed people to?
It extended a window of 1 year, which expired in November 2023, to file claims that would have otherwise been statutorily barred, time barred,
right,
for abuse, alleged sexual abuse, as an adult as well. It was called the Adult Survivors of Sexual. It was something along those lines, the Survivors of Abuse Act. E. Jean Carroll was instrumental in getting that passed. The day it gets passed, she files her lawsuit against Trump. It's a civil suit, not criminal. And she, so she did that.
She did what she did.
The window lapsed, and she got her claim heard by a New York court, and wild. I mean, it's a 25-year-old, 30-year-old claim of he assaulted me in a Bergdorf changing room. She was allegedly wearing a dress that didn't exist at the time of the alleged assault. She's a bona fide psychopath whose cat is named Vagina T Fireball. Evidence was not allowed.
I've never heard the T Fireball
Oh
before.
yeah, she named her cat Vagina T Fireball. She posted on Facebook how like she learned everything she needs to know about sex from her dogs. Chased the male dog down, and then she's a.
I mean, this makes
crazy.
the Kavanaugh stuff look legitimate.
It makes it all. You realize it's just a play. It's just the playbook. 30-some-odd-year-old allegations that can never be disproven. As if Trump can walk into a Bergdorf and go into a changing room, without people harassing him, hounding him, whatever. So
Well, that's why it seems like all of these, again, for anyone who's kind of paying attention, especially someone like yourself with legal experience, the point, you could say that the process is the punishment, but that's not even it. I think that the whole point is just to have something for the media to grab and say, look at all these lawsuits. I remember having a conversation with someone a few years ago when he was running, and it was all these allegations of sexual assault, of rape, or whatever they were, and like the guy's got 40 allegations. I'm like, that means
no.
nothing.
They're saying that out of New York. He's got 91 indictments. It means nothing. But it's one step further than the process is the punishment. We're seeing now in real time how, in eras past, it just took a racially prejudiced jury to convict anybody based on fabricated accusations if the person didn't get physically, publicly lynched beforehand.
Right. Or let them off. OJ.
Or let them off. I mean, let them off in D.C. We're witnessing in real time replace racial prejudice with political prejudice, and we're witnessing the modern day lynch mobs. You get New York, E. Jean Carroll files her suit there. You get a totally politically prejudiced, biased jury that will find Trump guilty. Period. They didn't believe that he raped her, by the way. In the jury form, it says, did he rape her? No. Did he sexually abuse her? Yeah, there we believe enough of her lie of a story. We don't believe that he raped her because that's what she said. But we believe that he sexually abused her so that we can now find him civilly liable, so that when he denies having done it, she can argue defamation, take it back to court there, and get an absurd judgment. Again, with another judge who's so wildly biased, it defies words. The judge is named Kaplan in that case, and the lawyer was also named Kaplan.
Is that which one is the guy with the white hair?
Engelron. So
which case is that?
That is the New York fraud case brought by Soros-funded Leticia James. So I'll just list all of the. You got RICO, Georgia. You've got the hush money payments coming out of New York. Alvin Bragg, also Soros-funded. That's the one where he allegedly paid Stormy Daniels hush money payment, and they've issued a 39-charge indictment against him because every month when he put the check, the payment in the ledger, that's 3 felony charges right there for the same payment. So there's that. Then you got the E. Jean Carroll defamation out of New York. Then you've got the Judge Engelron alleged overvaluation fraud out of New York. You've got the Colorado removal from the ballot case going on. You've got the D.C. insurrection case going on with Jack Smith, also a corrupt hack. You've got the Florida case is the classified documents indictment, also brought by Jack Smith.
Oh my God. Okay, I thought there was like 3.
No, dude, there's 6. There's 6 or 7.
Jesus.
So, and some are civil, some are criminal, and some are state, some are federal. So, the Engelron, Judge Arthur Engelron, who 8 years ago or 9 years ago gave a speech to some journalists boasting about the tools he has as a judge to bypass jury verdicts if he wants to basically carry out his bias whims. He's got summary judgment, collateral estoppel. He's got a bunch of tools. He said this literally, and he said in this interview, you can go look it up.
I saw that. Yeah.
It's risky for me to say this because I know that I'm on camera, but I've got tools that I can use. So this judge in the Leticia James case, the case was brought for fraud. It's a civil case for disgorgement of ill-gotten gains, but it's basically run like a criminal case. Leticia James, who is a bona fide psychopath who ran on a campaign, her election campaign, on going after Trump by name specifically, who in her campaign accused him of foreign money laundering. And we got to follow the money. He's foreign money laundering because domestic banks don't want to lend to him, which was wrong. And so she had to change her theory of the case to now, domestic banks did lend to him, so it's got to be fraud. The case was predicated on fraudulent overvaluation of assets so that he could procure loans from the banks at allegedly preferential interest rates.
Right.
The entire case is bullshit. He paid back all of the loans. The banks came and testified after the summary judgment on liability had already been issued. So there was no more trial. What you saw, the 6-week trial, was only on the quantum. It wasn't on liability because the judge already found him liable for fraud by way of summary judgment.
Right. Which,
So,
can you explain? Because I've been to court several times, and I've had the other party request a summary judgment, which is something they can do, which is basically that
there's no disputed
whoever
fact.
it is, there's nothing. They have no case. This doesn't even need to be heard. Let the judge make a judgment without a trial.
Well, so in Quebec, it's a little different, and we don't really have these summary judgments where you say, okay, there's no disputed facts, so based on the facts alone, the judge can rule. But that's what it is. Say,
mine was in the U.S., so I'm familiar with their system.
The concept is there's no disputed matter of fact, and so it's purely a legal question that the judge can rule on immediately. The only problem in this Florida case, there was a very big issue of fact as to whether or not there was an actual overvaluation. The judge comes in and says, look, I've got a county appraiser who evaluates Mar-a-Lago at anywhere between $18 and $27 million. This is a $1 billion property, and it's laughable to everybody. But the judge comes in by way of on motion for summary judgment and says, yeah, no disputed fact here. He overvalued it. Now we're just going to go and see how much we disgorge by way of ill-gotten gains purportedly.
So was that not the same thing they did to Alex Jones?
Yes.
Wasn't that summary judgment as well?
That was default verdict, which is a little bit different, but we're talking about the same types of tools. Alex Jones was defaulted, which means that he misbehaved so poorly in the context of the lawsuit that they not only said you're not allowed to present a defense, they said we're finding you guilty by default, meaning the plaintiffs don't even have to prove their case. I've never in my life... And that was
because of discovery, right? They said we asked for something and you didn't supply it.
Yeah, because they asked for things that he couldn't get, like videos or lists of videos on YouTube and Google, because he's been deplatformed. He doesn't have access to that. And then they said, look, you made money. We know you made money. Show us where you made the money. And he's like, I didn't make money from this. And they defaulted him out of Connecticut and then used that default to default him in Texas. It's
wow. How would you even quantify where you made money based on content? Anyone who does this is like, what, dude? Why is the fan watching you? Because of one topic you covered 15 years ago?
It's not even that. He never, in any material sense, covered Sandy Hook. The only times, and I know this case inside out, of the rare occasions where he did, it wasn't an immensely popular topic. It was just that his crowd was insisting that he cover it.
Right.
So I always said, like, they've Alex Jones, Donald Trump, but Alex Jones was a default verdict, which is another tool that they have. Summary judgment is a little bit different, but it amounts to the same thing. There's no actual trial on the merits. And so that 6-week trial where we heard from the banks saying, we lent him this money in full awareness of fact and law. We wanted his business. We would have lent him the money had his assets been valued, had he said his assets were worth half what they were. We got paid back in full. It's not just that there's no harm, no foul. It's that everyone did business in full awareness of fact and law, but you get Fani Willis. No, not Fani Willis. I'm sorry, Leticia James, who campaigned off prosecuting Trump, whose case of foreign money laundering fell through because banks were in fact lending to him. Has to go, oh, he overvalued his assets. They get a crooked Judge Engeron, and I call him Nipple Judge Engeron because this is a guy, I don't know if you know this, he's a bit of a weirdo and a pervert in general. He had an alumni website where he was posting links to his own rulings and boasting about how he was screwing Eric Trump. Not screwing in the sexual sense, but he's like, hey guys, look at this link. I stuck it to Eric Trump by way of a ruling in his alumni website. So this judge is so biased and politically partisan. He's got his own alumni website, where he's boasting about his negative rulings. And he also then posted a picture of him topless with the camera at his groin, taking a picture upwards angle. And he called it bonus torso photo. I mean, so the guy's on camera boasting about all his tools that he has to arrive at his, predisposed, biased conclusions. He's boasting about what he's doing in his alumni page, and he's a disgusting pervert to begin with. So that's the judge there. Then he comes down last week after the 6 weeks of hearing on the quantum, because the summary judgment was already in, $355 million disgorgement of, quote, ill-gotten gains, plus $98 million in prejudgment interest, which is going to accrue pending appeal. So Trump, if he appeals, has got to put the entire amount in basically in court.
In escrow.
Wow. Yeah, in escrow, in a court account, and pay the interest, which is like $39 million a year. Did I get that right? Is that right? That might not be right. I read that, but I don't think that
on the 350.
It's basically it's going to be interest on interest. It's going to be interest on the.
That would be like 10%. That's like Quebec taxes.
It's it's basically like communism just taking your assets. And
well,
so it's just wild. The 355 million for a case in which everyone was happy, repaid in full, and everyone rightly saying, "Well, get the hell out of New York." Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary is saying it, Cuban is saying it. We're leaving because it's not just a Trump issue. Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, comes out and says, this won't happen to anybody except for Trump. So confirming it's politically biased.
We only do this to people we don't like.
Absolutely. Right? And then the only question is, law-abiding and rule-abiding New Yorkers don't have to worry. Well, great, Kathy. What are the rules? Basically, whatever the hell we say they are if we like you.
Right. Well, that's where I was going to go because, like I said, we met originally at one of the freedom, I guess we call it a freedom protest in Montreal during the lockdowns. You were one of many friends I had who got out of the country because of the craziness here. But due to these rulings in New York, what they've done is de facto eliminate private property. So if you want to talk about which one's scarier, the precedent that's been set is remarkable and terrifying with this, because how are you supposed to operate a business? Banks aren't going to be scared. They can go after their clients. There's no one claimed harm. This was just the government.
But it's not like no one claimed harm. Like, okay, you have someone in an abusive relationship and they don't want to press charges. It's not like both people were conspiring to defraud the government. Nobody claimed harm because there was no harm. And you make the accurate point. It's not hyperbole to call this communism. What they've basically said is we can find a way to just take away your private property. And the amazing thing, and I said it as a joke at the beginning, but it's going to turn out to be true. Leticia James just the other day said, if he can't come up with the money, we're prepared to use the judicial resources to seize assets to pay in kind. Well, at what valuation do you think they're going to seize his assets? If they had access to Mar-a-Lago, they'll say, great, you owe us $455 million. Mar-a-Lago's only worth $30 million as per our court order. So now you owe us another $420 million.
Right.
I mean, the criminals are the government. I mean, there's no other way to say it. They are the criminals. They're the ones engaging in RICO fraud. They're the ones engaging in racketeering. They are the criminals, but they have the power of the law and corrupt judges behind them.
I saw a tweet just yesterday. I don't know if it's true or not, but it was an article from a newspaper in like 1940 saying that Mar-a-Lago was for sale for $20 million.
Yeah, Patrick Bet David. I saw PBD. It's Patrick Bet David. I saw that tweet. He's generally quite accurate. It's a no-brainer.
But the crazy thing, even if it was only worth $20 million, what he did is not illegal. That's the crazy thing.
That's it. Well, first of all, how you value your property there is an element of subjectivity to it. Somebody would pay that money. I mean, the only real confirmation is what it would go for on the open market. To Steelman Engelron's ruling, he said that there were business restrictions on what you could do with the property, which substantially devalued it. Am I allowed swearing on your channel?
Yeah.
Bullshit.
You are at liberty, David.
You could burn that place. Sorry, hold on, my hair's getting in my way. You could burn that property down, and the lot would be worth $400 million. There was an empty lot selling for what? I think it was $200 million up the street. This is people don't know what this looks like. I went to Mar-a-Lago. There's no real estate there.
Right, you were there just recently.
Yeah, it was great. I made a joke that I was there for my own property valuation, but it's a magnificent place. But you could burn down the building, you could shred the dog, you could sell that lot of land to Jeff Bezos, Zuckerberg. They can build a compound there. They would buy it for hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, so there's no dispute. So to get back to what you had just mentioned, where the government is the problem, sort of an ongoing theme on at least my past show is the difference on sort of the right wing between libertarianism, which is sort of that the government is the problem, and your conservatism, which is like, well, let's use the government properly. And I'm still undecided. I don't know what I would call myself, but I know that maybe some people don't know this about you, but originally you were a regular YouTuber or normal YouTuber, if there is such a thing.
Family. I was a Casey Neistat
wannabe. Well, that's a normal person doing YouTube videos. And then I don't know exactly what your evolution was, but I'm assuming that at some point, I don't know if you were just radicalized along with everyone else circa 2016 when the world went insane. Or was it because obviously you went from your vlog to your vlog, where you started commenting on court cases. And I think you were really, I don't know if it was luck or circumstance or God just smiled on you, but there were some really great cases.
Oh,
Since that time, you had Rittenhouse, you had Johnny Depp, you had.
I know there's a thing about just, being in the right place at the right time. And there's a certain element of not luck. It's like, a golfer, what's the expression? Or what's my fault?
It's opportunity.
Yeah, it's like it's a matter of luck, to get a hole in one. But the more times you can put the ball within the area, the more times you can maximize that luck.
Exactly.
I started off like the irony is, like, looking back on all this, I've always been political in the sense that I've had my thoughts, I've had my beliefs, and I remember debating, the Second Intifada with people back in the day. I was definitely naive and ignorant, but I avoided politics not because I didn't have my political thoughts. It's just like it's like discussing religion. You're never going to convince anybody. It only led to fights. Mm-hmm. It only led to disagreement. My parents brought me up with the idea, don't talk religion or politics at parties because it doesn't go anywhere good. Where I got radicalized, if that's the word, is you can't avoid the politics. And where I initially, I didn't want to make enemies. I wanted to make funny videos. I wanted to initially give legal analysis without giving my own opinion because I didn't want to make enemies. And then you realize no matter what you do, you're going to make enemies. So you may as well make enemies for the right reasons. Like
exactly.
When I did my Brett Kavanaugh, what was her name? Christina Blasey Ford breakdown. I'm like, I was giving everyone the benefit of the doubt, but not sharing the fact that I thought Christina Blasey Ford was batshit crazy. I can make her arguments for her, but I still thought, as a matter of fact, that she was batshit crazy. And then at some point it became useless not to say it because just by virtue of silence is violence. Well, okay, fine. Then if I'm going to be violent, it's going to be not through silence. If I'm going to make enemies, it's going to be through not. It's going to not be.
Yeah, do it civilly. But my question is more because 2015, I was listening to NPR. I voted for Trudeau. I was that sort of basic normie liberal guy. I kind of paid attention to politics tangentially, but wasn't really involved. And again, would get in arguments on Facebook about the Intifada, whatever it was. But my question is, did your politics change at all in the past 10 years? Where
I don't think so. I can think of two issues where my opinion has certainly evolved, and it's abortion and gun rights. Mm-hmm. And it's only evolved there because of the corruption that I've been made thoroughly aware of. Like I don't think my policy, like what, biggie things like gay rights, never changed, never going to change. Trans rights, it wasn't an issue 10 years ago. And I don't think my opinion on that is going to change because everyone live your best life. But the second you want to give medication to a kid who's too young to get a tattoo or drink alcohol, we've got a problem. Right. So I don't think my politics have changed wildly. I know that I've evolved on abortion, gun rights, and the death penalty. Once upon a time, thoroughly support the death penalty. I still support the death penalty in its purest abstract form, but having seen the way the government will literally fabricate evidence and execute innocent people, it's something that I support in principle, but not in practice because it can never be entrusted to humans who are corrupt or corruptible. Mm-hmm. So I voted for Trudeau the first time. It was 2015, eh? Mm-hmm. What the hell did I know?
Can you believe that's
anything?
A decade ago?
It's a decade ago. And I remember you vote liberal because it means that you're a good person to vote liberal.
Well, not just that. I mean, if you go back, I've seen clips of him campaigning in 2015, and I still agree with almost everything he said.
That's
right.
The
if he had actually, sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say he has changed. I would say more where you can actually juxtapose Canadians love guns to no guns. We're not the type of country that makes vaccines mandatory to we're making vaccines mandatory. So he definitely
to then we didn't. Yeah.
So like, but then the other things like back in 2015, we always knew defund the CBC. I think it was a thing back then, but I had no understanding of the depths of the depravity of the corruption. But it was definitely not as bad as it is today. No. So I don't think I've.
That's it. I was going to say because I wasn't back then. I wasn't on the defund CBC train because they had people like Rex Murphy. Yeah. Right. It wasn't what it's become. It used to be, at least it had the facade of being balanced, and they would kind of publish somewhat of both opinions, but all of that has changed. And
yeah.
What do you call it? Like, what would you define yourself as now? Are you libertarian? Are you, I don't even know if you're, I'm assuming you're probably a little bit like me in that, like, I'm not necessarily pro-Trump or anti-Trump. I don't hate the guy, but I also can't stop myself from judging him in the way that he did govern. And he kind of, Yeah, we did, like what we wanted was either Ron Paul or Bukele, and we got neither.
Well, so what am I politically? I would say if you have to give it a name, I'd say a constitutionalist. I mean, if we only respected the Charter of Rights or the Constitution in the States, we'd be good.
Right.
But I think I'm just right in the sense that I'm just right. It's rational thought. Like I might make mistakes. I don't know what I would think that I've ever been wildly wrong on politically, but I would not give myself a name because I think the names or the labels are useless. Yeah. I would just say I respect the Charter of Rights, and if that makes me far right, then then that'll be up to someone else to label. Ran with the PPC, the People's Party of Canada, because I mean, for God's sake, the Conservatives. It's not that they're not conservative; it's that they don't respect the Charter. And you get the Conservatives, and you get, I won't name names, but you get these these Conservatives talking about white privilege and respecting gender pronouns, and you get them adhering to these. It's not left-wing ideas; it's just radical ideas. And you realize, okay, well, conservatives are not conservative, even if they're called conservative. Liberals sure as hell are not liberal, even if they're called liberals. And the People's Party of Canada, other than the fact that it sounds like a communist Chinese party, I mean, the party adheres to my principles.
Yeah, I think we had met. I'm a founding member of that party from way back in the day. I remember meeting Bernier far before the election at a fundraiser here in Montreal, and that was the first question I had. It's like, where'd you get the name? And he said, well, it's a French, it's a Frenchism that he kind of translates. Like, it works really well in the other language. I'm like, yeah, well, Canada's a big country.
I mean, people think it's the CPC. Like what I say is like, oh, yeah. The Chinese, well, no, the CCP. Sorry. So it's an unfortunate name, but it's the only party that I've ever, I guess the party even might be more libertarian because there's a lot of PPC dudes that I see on Twitter who are wildly offensive, who I disagree with, and who boast the hashtag. But that's what it means to have a divergence of opinions where you don't apply litmus tests to a political party like the Conservatives do to some extent, as the Liberals do as a matter of rule.
Yeah, well, that's what I was obviously drawn to the party, because they are the closest thing we have to what we do have a Libertarian Party in Canada. I believe it's Tim Moen. I don't know if he's still the guy who's running that, but like most Libertarian parties, they're really good at losing.
Well, I mean,
and PPC hasn't really, they haven't strayed far from that.
Well, but they, and now that I've run with the PPC and I understand the level of corruption in Canada, just to get airtime and to get, I did it when I ran, and I did an interview with the CBC, and they don't put it up on their website after the interview, and I think it's because the interview was kind of good and I didn't look like a dumbass, and I have to hound them for 4 days to put the interview up, and then they finally put it up the Sunday before the Monday of the election. Like, you see the corruption. You don't need to have good ideas or good thoughts when you control the bullhorns. So I don't blame the PPC's losses on bad governments, bad messaging. It's the system is designed to make it virtually impossible for new parties or politically unpopular parties to ever get the bullhorn in the first place. The Libertarian Party in the States, however, they post some stuff on the internet, on Twitter, that I'm like, oh my, how can anybody want to be part of the Libertarian Party with tweets like this, with messages like this? And I appreciate you have to be antagonistic to rattle the cage to get some attention, but making jokes about 9/11.
I think it's even hard to define the Libertarian Party. Obviously, I'm sure you're familiar with Dave Smith and the Mises Caucus guys, who I've been a bigger fan of them than there's the right-wing libertarian and left-wing libertarian, and a left-wing libertarian is like, dry water. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. But even within the right-wing libertarian, you have the factions there. So even they say the old phrase is that it's like herding cats, but it's very hard also to say what it is the libertarian message is, other than like, well, we're not them.
Well, and I've had on Dave Smith, I've had on Scott Horton, I've had on Spike Cohen. So I mean, I'm very familiar with the Libertarians. As it's, the philosophy is one that it's amenable to an eclectic group of people coming together, even though they will have wildly different opinions on certain things. So Scott Horton, as a Libertarian, I'll agree with a lot of what he says. When it comes to his position on Israel and Palestine, we'll have disagreement, and I can even respect the fact that he believes what he does. And I don't know what that makes me. Like, does that make me a traitor or whatever? But the idea of tolerating people's political opinions, even if you find them offensive, to the extent that it's not stuff like administering puberty blockers to kids based on the lie that it's totally reversible. I'm always open for disagreement, but within the Libertarian Party, you have the free minds, and so it is tough to have cohesiveness there.
You got to get past the autism, and you get into those.
They have some wild conventions. I've seen the videos of these. The Libertarian conventions they're eccentric and eclectic, but
they challenge the what's the socialist group in the U.S. It's the I don't remember the name for it, but there's clips of their things, where they start off with the pronouns and then they go into
oh my god, that was
the DSA, the Democratic Socialists.
That was the one where they had a clip about the guys talking about trigger warnings and stop chattering. That's also what happens when you don't have a mother or a father who says, shut the hell up if you think you're that special that you get to dictate other people's conduct like that. Oh my God. Like I'm not a proponent of spanking. I don't do it. And I think it's antiquated. I don't actually think that it achieves the desired result, but not telling a kid that grow up and quit being a baby, that's what you yield by way of an adult. Dysfunctional adults who can't deal with the slightest bit of adversity.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot of things that are causing problems in today's, and it's tough because, I don't like to stick the label, and I don't like it when I find it just, there's almost no point to it when you try to attach a former label. Like people are like, oh, those guys are fascists. These guys are left. These guys are right. And what people don't seem to realize is that even if you could go back to, say, the World War II era and try to attach yourself to any faction there, the ability to put yourself in their mindset at that time and say, oh, this is what they meant by that, and this is what they wanted, and that's what these terms would translate to in today's era, it's almost impossible. And I think maybe we need to get better at coming up with new terms for what it is people are, because we're always sort of struggling for this way to, well, how do I define myself? And we can say, well, I was an old.
It is just looking to oversimplify, not for either for the purposes of writing off or the purposes of associating with. And look, it's human nature. You need to have clear-cut concepts to understand. Politics, religion, human individuality it happens to not be one of those things. You can have your ultimate litmus tests, which are pro-life or pro-life versus pro-abortion and not pro-choice is one of them. But even then, there's not nuance, there's reality in there. And so you can say, like, in an ideal world, nobody should have these things. But then there has to be political reality that is not going to be preserving eggs in vitro, like you just see in Alabama. Now we're going to have to see where that goes. But no, it's people need clear delineations in order to know where they stand and where others stand. And it's an oversimplified way of viewing the world that has been made exponentially worse with the advent of social media. But it's always been like this to some extent or another.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's why, again, a major discussion on my previous show was that sort of, if you look at what now they call the dissident right, which is the kind of people who are like, you know what? And I've always been a proponent of this, that I've never been a fan of democracy per se. I mean, I remember reading an article when I was like 18 or 19. It was with not the Dalai Lama, but someone like him from this sort of Eastern tribal culture where he was the head. It was like 7 years in Tibet, which again, I think is the Dalai Lama, but I'm not sure. And he was saying, like, I can't believe you let people vote. This is crazy, because he was raised in a system where they had, I guess, the wise elders.
Yeah, well,
elders.
A benevolent dictator is the other way of describing it.
Right, or a monarchy, or these other things. Like people say, how right wing are you? I'm like, well, I don't know, but I'm not opposed to the idea of things being run in that Yarvin-esque way of like, okay, why don't run it like a business where you have a CEO, you have someone in charge. And at least that was in that system, you knew whose head to chop off if things got crazy, and you could associate the blame.
But that the government is a corporation to some extent. Not to say the government is a corporation. President, vice president, directors. There will be no perfect system. That's the bottom line. So whether or not you have democracy, the risk is tyranny of the majority. Flip side, in democracy, tyranny of the minority, which is what we're seeing now. Everyone wants a benevolent dictator, but the difference between a benevolent dictator and a dictator is a question of interpretation of intentions. And so, as far as I'm concerned, the only way to do it is the constitutional republic is a damn good way, especially compared to what we have in Canada, but
it's not a bad idea. I think a lot of people don't really know what exactly it is that we have in Canada, where it's actually the Governor General who is the one that I've listened to a long show on it. I don't remember exactly the details, but they are kind of the representative of the king, and they're there by this letters of consent that goes back to the crown. And then it's such a convoluted, strange system. I would have no problem with us sort of shrugging off the monarchy completely and setting up a system of governance a lot more like the American one, where at least there's a constitution. There's like, here's the rules.
Well, in theory, we had a Bill of Rights, or we do have a Bill of Rights, and we do have
in
a
theory.
charter.
I've had on his name is slipping my mind. He was
Brian
Peckford. Brian Peckford. So
Yep,
he's my brother's neighbor in Victoria, and he was asking me for like a long time. He's like, get him on your show, because he really stood up during the protests. He was someone who wrote the Canadian Charter.
He's the last person who wrote the charter, who knew what it meant and who knew what it stood for, and is now getting discriminated against. It's wild.
Yeah, and getting, it's like, okay, because I don't think there's a person alive who didn't get into multitudinous amounts of arguments with people online about what our rights actually were and whether we had any, especially when it comes to an emergency.
This is I won't call it a radicalization, but I will call it a realization. Ooh, I'm gonna write that down. Back in the day when I was doing, the vlog, but I think I'm still objective, and I'm not neutral, but I'm objective, and I'll give both sides, and I'll say what I think now. But back before I gave my opinion, everyone's like, you have no free speech in Canada. What the hell are you talking about, Viva? When I was talking about Bill C-16, and I was telling Jordan Peterson he's overreacting somewhat. Bad cases make for bad law. Then I realized, well, bad cases become the law. And people were saying, you don't have free speech in Canada. I was like, what do you think? Of course we do. We got a charter. We got our whatever, which one it is, the freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. And then you realize, like, that caveat, they cannot be infringed upon except in as much as justified in a free and democratic society. Well, then I realized we have a caveat that has no limits, and we have no freedoms in Canada. We have no freedom of speech because it can be shut off at the snap of a finger if they say, well, this is a reasonable restriction in a free and democratic society. Mobility, well, that was shut off real quick during COVID. So I've come to the realization that it's true. Unless it is a quasi-religious respect of these charter rights, they don't exist. In the States, the respect of the Constitution for those who respect it is quasi-religious. For the others, the ones who purport to respect it but actually desecrate it, it's totally political. So, we're subjects in Canada. We are not free citizens.
I mean, and that speaks to something that I've always believed about whatever system it is that you have, or whatever you call it. If it's not culturally enforced, it means nothing. And as they're proving right now, it doesn't matter what the laws are. I mean, this is sort of what Soros has done when he realized, oh no, you don't need to change the laws. You just need to change the way they're enforced. Yeah,
you just need to change who enforces them.
Exactly. And the return on investment, when he's looking, everyone says, oh, we got to win the presidency. He's like, no, I just need the DAs. I just need these small guys. The ROI on these small campaigns is exponential.
What does it cost? I mean, you're talking thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for school boards, for local judges. It is wild, and that's where it starts to boil up from. And it's true, the presidency. We've seen the presidency doesn't really control much, especially when the deep state doesn't allow the president to do anything. But No, I'd say the bottom line is it's in Canada through COVID, that really was the realization. We have no rights, but you see how quickly democracy becomes the tyranny of the minority, where everything that was done during COVID, I mean, it was the tyranny of the minority under the pretext of protection, benevolence, and the limits of a free and democratic society. But we certainly breached those in the hysteria and panic that we were in at the time. And just hopefully we get some sanity and lucidity back going forward and look back and say, what did we learn?
Lord willing. I mean, I think that was the most challenging thing for myself and many other people on the sort of freedom side of things, was watching what happened to our communities and our neighbors, and what I thought was Canadian culture vanish. The last place on earth I thought people would start calling the police because their neighbor had guests. This is supposed to be a free and democratic country. And then I was like, okay, was this something that was always lying underneath in the Canadian I don't know, the sub-psyche?
It's something that's lying underneath the human condition. I mean, and it does go to show you the vulnerability of humans. If placed under enough duress, torment, fear, 90+% of humans are going to react the way we saw most people react. And others will react differently. And so it's not anything unique to Canadian society, because you saw it in certain blue states. You saw it in Australia. You saw it in the UK. You saw it in many parts of the world. It's something to human nature where, you know, people will react irrationally, is the word, intempestively, when they are under duress, when they're in a state of panic and a state of fear. And you have 3 years of death counts on the bottom of computer screens or television screens, and you're told that the only way to get out of this is X. I mean, it's not that you can't blame them. I think you damn well can blame them. But you can certainly understand how societies of previous eras devolved into what they devolved into. How did the Holocaust happen? I no longer ever need to ask that question. And I don't care if people find that to be offensive. When you actually have society justifying forcible detainment of people because of medical status, not because of illness even, when you have people justifying suppressing free speech, calling the cops, I mean, people justifying boarding up basketball nets and chaining off dog runs and swing sets. I don't need. They're not in. They're not in
kids.
Yeah. You're sure you're not hauling them off in train cars to concentration camps. So it's not as bad by any means. But being the same distance versus being in the same direction are two different things, and they can be distinguished. But I never ever again need to ask the question: how did society devolved into Nazi Germany? How did tens of millions of people starve under Stalin? I now see what you get the government in to usurp private property, to scare out business, to interfere with food chains, the food supply. Man, it's been a dark, eye-opening experience the last 3 years.
Oh, absolutely. And it's when you even bringing up the Holocaust, I remember having arguments with a lot of people where they're like, oh, they're not putting people on trains. I'm like, yeah, well, things come in stages. So we're only at the ghetto stage so far. Does that mean you can't make the warning in comparison? Like, listen, these certain behaviors lead somewhere. And then the what brought me back to that thought is what they did was so remarkable. I think it was Goebbels who's like, make the lie big enough that people can't fathom the concept that it's a lie. And that's what again, I don't want to get into details about anything. It's the first show on a new channel that I plan on having on YouTube. I don't know where they're at with the censorship right now. I know the rules
you're already on a list.
as long as it's not they don't shut it down completely, but you know what I mean, that people couldn't grasp the concept that the government, the media, everything is creating something that's, again, everyone has their kind of opinions on what actually happened and what it went through. And I know even for yourself, because you had my
grandfather escaped Poland in 1936. Like no one gets to, first of all, no one gets to shame anybody because they are or are not Jewish to disregard their opinions or their perspectives. But people understand, like Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat, but it tends to rhyme. We're never going to have that again.
Right.
We were never going to have that again, if only because it would be at a different point in time.
Yeah. Don't speak too soon.
Well, no, but
I'm on Twitter.
It will look different when it happens again, and it'll be similar but not identical. But the idea that if it could never happen again, and you could never learn the lessons from it, then why say never again? Like they said never again. They held Nuremberg. It wasn't because it was so singularly unique it could never be repeated. It's because it wasn't singularly unique, and throughout history there have been moments like that. And so you learn from it, and if you say you can never talk about it or analogize it, you're not learning anything from it. That will never happen again the way it happened. But people weren't being hauled off on trains. Yeah, except they were being hauled off to government-designated quarantine facilities without the benefit of counsel. They were being whisked off to government-designated facilities without their families knowing where they were going. They were being forced to be subjected to medical experimentation. Mike, I'm sorry. So it wasn't Dr. Mengele doing it. It was Dr. Fauci doing it while lying to you and saying it's safe and effective instead of telling you, no, we're torturing you. So yeah I'm sorry. It doesn't. It's not identical, but it sure as hell rhymes.
Yeah. Okay, we're almost out of time, David. I think that's an excellent place to leave it.
I could go for hours.
We
Mark.
could go for hours. I know you said you're going live in 30 minutes.
Well,
so,
no, oddly enough, so at 1 o'clock, this will be airing later, but I'm actually having Kayla Pollock on, who is someone who was injured injured from a certain medical procedure, and the socialist government that compelled, coerced, brainwashed, or terrified people into subjecting themselves to this.
This isn't going where I think it's going, is it?
No. She's well. They as part of her treatment, she got paralyzed from this, and they offered her maids unsolicited.
Okay, that's
they offered her.
Jesus Christ.
It's dark beyond your wildest dreams, nightmares, I should say, dreams. So anyways, that's what I have on today. But yeah, no, this is Mark. We'll do this again.
Well, everyone tune in. For anyone who doesn't know who you are, let the people know where to find you.
Viva Frei. Viva Frei. I'm waiting one day I'll be in public. Someone's going to say Viva. I was like, how the hell did you know the shirt?
Yeah, I was wearing my name on a shirt.
And my shoes and on my keychain. The Viva Frei on Twitter. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com for all of the good, juicy political, legal analysis with Robert Barnes, who's a practicing attorney in the States. And that's it. I'm Viva Frei on Rumble. But you put Viva Frei in the interwebs, you'll find a lot of stuff, including me catching a fish with a drone. That's
nice. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you like this show, press the like button. And if you want to see more content like this, subscribe. Thank you. We'll see you all soon. Bye.
That was good.